Let's talk about love and marriage, the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. We'll help your spirit transform.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Maurice.
Hey, Kafi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's good. That's good.
So, we've been going at this for quite some time, this podcast thing. And some time ago, Maurice, you purchased these, what are they called? Pod
Decks.
decks. And it's a deck of cards that gives us ideas of what to talk about to you all in the podcast world. And we shuffled them up and picked a card out. And this one says, interview your significant other.
Yes.
So I drew the short end of the stick. So I have to interview this gentleman sitting beside me. So to our audience out there, welcome to the No Fruit Podcast, where we talk about building our lives so that we can be fruitful. And we have a special guest today. His name is Maurice Darian Chisholm Sr. We just added that. So he is my significant other, has been that for 27 wonderful years. And he was refusing to look at me as I explain and introduce him. But he and I have been together for 27 wonderful years. Went through a 2.5, 3-year courtship, got married, and, have been together ever since. Many said we wouldn't make it, but we're still here, just like the song says. But so again, I'm so glad to have with me my interviewee, Mr. Maurice Chisholm. Welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Kafi Chisholm. Thank you very much for introducing me. Such a warm welcome.
Yes. So we're so glad to have you here. And so I guess first question I can start off with is, you came up with this idea of the No Fruit Podcast. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how you came up with that name. What does it mean to you when you started it? And what does it mean to you now?
So the No Fruit Podcast was started a long time ago in 2019.
Wow.
And
The teens.
yeah, right. And so we are now in our 6th season for the show. I started it off because I wanted to provide something for individuals who were in the space of getting married, those that were married already, to kind of ground them, give them some point of reference, things like that. And it was also something for me to do it with my wife. I'm sorry, with you. And so I believe that the show originally started off with us talking about biblical things because that's who we were. We were church, like very church. I mean, we're still very churchy now, but we understand that we don't have to wear or be Bible thumping individuals.
I don't think we ever really were, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I think the show kind of started off that way. And so as time has progressed and we start to live a little bit more day by day, grow more and more, hour by hour, whatever it might have been, the show now has progressed into something that we did not anticipate, i.e. myself, did not anticipate in 2019. I did not expect for it to, one, be 6 years running. That's number one. Number two, I didn't expect for it to grow to the point of where it has the audience is a literally worldwide global audience, where we're hitting charts across the world. It's funny how you can't hit it at home, but we could hit it across the globe in relationships, about relationships. And then we're being nominated for an award. Again, these type of things that you never put yourself in a position, or you don't think of yourself being put in that position to do any one of these things. We didn't start off that way. We didn't think that way. We didn't say, hey, it's going to be, top, charting and award winning, things like that. It was something for us to say, hey, let's help out these individuals and let's try to have some fun doing it. It's been a labor of love, in all honesty. And some of that has been because of life. And unfortunately, life gets in the way. You're like, I ain't doing this thing no more. It's taking up too much time. It's taking up too much energy. And now all of a sudden, you find yourself at a crossroads. Where do we go? How do you continue to keep yourself motivated? So understanding that the show is greater than us. The stuff that we see or the roots that we've planted. See, sometimes we don't all, because we're rooted, the root, we might be the trunk or whatever it is. We don't always see every single piece of fruit or flower that's on all the branches, because we don't necessarily know every branch that's produced another branch that's produced another branch that produce a flower. We don't see that. We hear it on the back end on some cases.
Right.
And especially from people that we didn't even anticipate is listening. So I think from that perspective, the No Fruit was it started off being a scripture. Hey, we're married, be fruitful, multiply. And some people kind of like, hey, what are you doing that's not, or y'all not who y'all think y'all are, all those type of things. So it's taking that idea of us not bearing fruit, or us questioning whether or not we are bearing fruit. And so taking that idea of no fruit, right? Nothing, you're bearing, all that type of stuff, and flipping it to say, hey, no, we are making a positive impact out there in the world. So, i.e., No Fruit Podcast.
Very well. So there's a spin on it. I know sometimes people hear that title, No Fruit Podcast, and they think that we're talking about food items, or people may listen and know that Maurice doesn't like fruit. So he thinks that's part of what it is.
The irony.
Yes. It may, have some other ideas as people just hear the title or see the logo and things like that. So, so outside of the No Fruit Podcast, what are some other things that Maurice does?
So I have 2 other podcasts.
Yes, tell us about them.
So the very first podcast that I created was the Neighbors Podcast, Naybors. That was the very first podcast. And that was created with my neighbor because we were on a radio show called the Late Night Snack Radio Show. And it kind of morphed from doing an internet radio show into, let's create the podcast. Let's keep it going.
Right.
And so, we talked about community events. We talked about men's health, things like that. So with that, it influenced, hey, if I could do it with my neighbor, I could definitely do it with my wife. So that's how No Fruit had come about. But then as time had gone on, just a little while, you know what, Kaf, maybe I should do one that is business related, since this is what I do every day. Mm-hmm. So then I started the That Will Never Work podcast. That Will Never Work podcast, because in business, because when you don't think outside the box, you're not constantly growing and maturing, going with the times, things like that. You're told things aren't going to work. You got to do everything brand new, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I started That Will Never Work, and that was based off of that premise of you being told, not you personally, but people being told it's not going to happen. And most importantly, was I was told that what I wanted to do from a business perspective or whatever, I was told it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't
Wow.
going to work. So, so every time I've been told no, whether it's no, we're not going to do this in the community, we're not going to have an effect, so we're going to start the Neighbors NAYBRS podcast. No, you're not going to grow in your marriage. Your kids ain't going to be anything, whatever it is. Then we started the No Fruit podcast, and then no, your business is not going to grow. It's not going to work. You're not going to influence anybody in that. So then you start that will never work podcast. Here's a reality. Each one of those are from a negative perspective that I am constantly in prayer about, constantly fasting over, that the Lord will continue to make a way for this idea of being told no will be changed. And so each one of those have grown in its own way, just like No Fruit Podcast has been nominated for an award that Will Never Work won an award.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. That Will Never Work has, over the last 2 years, interviewed well over 150 people, where in essence, the people that I've been touching and talking to in other cases, I would have never been able to do. So what's happened is I've been able to get outside of my own box for each and every one of those branches. And each one, because they serve something different, it's a different type of community. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. But it's been able to allow me to grow and become a better human. Y'all should see Kafi smile. I guess.
Well, the way you said human and gave me this, I don't know what type of smile that was. But so my other question, you had said something in reference to your future and your goals. And we've heard on the podcast, previous episodes, that you have a goal of $1 million home. So tell us more about that goal of your $1 million home.
So let's for those of you who don't always know the entrepreneurial mindset, it started because my mom had a friend who was a truck driver. I mean, not just a truck driver, but he towed individuals. He had his own company, and he showed a couple of dollars, right? He put out a couple of dollars out of his pocket. I can't tell you how many couple of dollars it was because my eyes were too big when I saw that knot coming out of his pocket. So, and so with that, the idea of going into entrepreneurship, wanting more, challenging myself more, those type of things had started to come about. So, long story short, because of the homes that I lived in growing up, the ideas, I always wanted to live in $1 million home. Now, as I explained to Kafi, it doesn't have to be $1 million home where that is our last space. It's just the idea of $1 million home. Now, it has morphed over the years. Again, me being in my grown man space today, the reality of the $1 million home at one time for me was to prove people wrong, right?
Similar to the shows.
Yes. Well, when you grow and mature out of that, you start to realize, one, based off of interest rates, the house is going to be $1 million, or whatever it might be today. But also, and I'm joking about the interest rates. That'll dictate I just want to be clear. That'll dictate my payment. It won't be the cost of the home itself. But it'll feel like $1 million. I'm paying $1 million. But the $1 million home shows for me being able to take care of the family, our friends, and opportunities. Because I don't just view it as just a home that, hey, I'm just going to go in and lay my head down in. I want to be able to share it. Because each and every one of us have people around us that, hey, we don't mind getting together. You want to make sure you got some space.
Right.
And in all honesty, based off of the market today, it's going to end up being $1 million, one way, shape, or form. And let's put it like this. It doesn't have to be $1 million when I buy it. It could be $1 million because I bought it at $100,000 and I invested $100,000 and now it's worth $2 million. You get what I mean? So I also understand that value as well. So those are the type of things of that dream or that idea of having $1 million home, and what it provides for not just Kafa and I, but our children, in lieu of our, potential grandchildren. We're going to put it out there, right? We're going to continue to be fruitful and multiply, right?
Right.
And then also our friends, because our friends group that we got caught up in life, raising kids, things like that. We got, we didn't hang out as much, but now we're older, and some of us are
old and gray.
Yes. So we need a little bit more space because, whatever. And then, but then their kids and grandkids and things like that. So,
Right.
So we're looking at, in some ways, a longer term. But again, the house itself doesn't have to be $1 million as much as all the amenities, the land, all those type of things. So that's that idea of $1 million crib.
So, in speaking in long term, going back to some things that you said previously in reference to the podcast and reference to being an entrepreneur, tell us your long-term goals. Like, what do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 20 years?
So, interesting enough, in 5 years, and we're going to speak this into existence. And I believe I'm close enough as it is, but seeing myself talking to, continue to talk with people across the globe, and being an influence of positivity and a true example of what living by the word looks like and feels like, no matter what the situation is, any circumstances, whatever it might be. We are a walking testimony because we've endured a lot. Kafa, you and I endured a lot. And so continue to do that in a positive situation, scenario, environment, along with, as I've said to you, have you retire in 5 years. 4 years now that we're looking at the clock. But and providing opportunities for our children and things like that. Make sure that those type of things are happening. So 5-year plan is to continue to grow and mature everything that I'm working on today.
And then what about 20 years?
Oh, yeah, 20 years. I want to be sitting on the beach, on my beach house, looking at the sun, drinking my little Arnold Palmers and things like that. Yeah, I think that's what I would like to be in 20 years. Sitting on the beach with you. And or if we're not on the beach, just us with the kids and grandkids. And or our friends.
A lot of and/ors going on.
Right.
Yeah. Very well. So for all the things that you have going on and, those who are following the No Fruit podcast certainly know how to get in contact with us in reference to that. But the other things that you have going on, the Neighbors podcast, the That Will Never Work podcast, in your entrepreneurial ventures, how do people hear more about those things? How do they get connected to you?
So they can reach me at www.mauricechisholm.com. And that's where you can find almost everything that's I have going on. So I do have master classes coming out very, very, very shortly.
Okay.
One would be a podcasting masterclass. So if those of you who are listening and would like to create your own podcast, hey, you can come on and learn how to become an award-winning podcaster, whether it is a real one or not, because it's all about a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing. yes, we won an award, but we already thought we were award winning prior to, because we feel as though we won just being able to put ourselves out there, getting outside the box. So, yeah, so becoming an award winning podcaster. Then I have another program coming out very shortly. It's a coaching program for those individuals who might have lost a little bit of focus, and you would like to try to get coached to get back, to get back to the other side of being focused and understanding what your why you're doing X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be. So, so that's that. Along with that, and it's funny that you say that, because I thought about this earlier in the week, where and because somebody said it, I always wanted to be a verb, not just a noun. So Google me.
Google you. Yeah.
No, so in all honesty, like, you can go on Amazon, type in my name, you'll see the various books that I have out there. So I am an author.
Great.
You'll see the podcast out there, and we might have some other little things coming up down the pike. For those of you who don't remember or were not around, that are new, I did have my own network on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. So that might be in the works again. We'll see. Hint, hint. So, so that's what I have, and where you can reach me and look for me as I continue to grow.
Great. Any final words as a interviewee on the No Fruit
This
podcast?
is weird because I'm not used to this side,
Yes.
right? And yeah, but it shows growth on my end, and it makes me. And for those of you who may not understand, again, because I interview a lot of people, and so it's interesting to hear it on the other side, and it's hard for me to be interviewed by you, to be honest, Kaf, because I want to be laughy and giggly and jokey and whatever else. Like, I just want to use certain terms. Like, for an example, we wrote down a shopping list early in the week, and I wrote down storage sucky bags, right? So I just want to.
And he meant storage vacuum bags, but he put storage sucky bags and really wrote out the words sucky.
So I'm trying to be serious and non-serious at the same time.
Okay.
Because I'm also like that on That'll Never Work. I'm serious. It depends on the guest. So if the guest is serious, then no, we're 100% business, But I have to show, in my opinion, I have to show my personality of who I really am.
Right.
So if I want to say sucky bags,
Because that's what they are, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Versus someone like yourself who will be, you probably will say, no, Maurice, those are storage vacuum bags. Like, you'll say every syllable, every letter, every, consonant, all that type of stuff. So
Sometimes.
So, that's why we're the No Fruit Podcast, because of our strengths and weaknesses, because of our individuality, and how we both have grown through this. So that is, I know you interview me, but this just shows the maturation of the show, of being able to show who we really are and what we've been able to do and accomplish. And keep in mind, we only talk about the podcast. I mentioned the books. I mentioned the coaching stuff. It was a mention. We didn't get deep into any of that stuff. We didn't get into the history of it. We didn't say what even motivated me 100% in that. I had to keep it short.
You didn't have to. This is,
I'm
our
keeping
show.
Again, I'm practicing for my other interviews.
Yes. So Maurice does have some interviews on other podcasts coming up pretty soon, and I'm sure that when those are available, he will share them with this audience, not only the other podcast audiences, but hopefully he'll share them here as well. So, Mr. Maurice Chisholm,
Yes.
It's been a pleasure sitting here talking with you today, learning more about you and your journey with starting this wonderful podcast called the No Fruit Podcast, along with some of the other things that you have going on in life with your entrepreneurial journey. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to hearing more from you and about you real soon.
Well, Kafa, it was a pleasure being on here, being interviewed by you. And are you ready to get interviewed?
Not at all.
Why not? You've done some amazing things.
I have.
So,
But it's a mystery to the world.
what is that stupid song? All to see.
Yes.
Oh, what is that? What is that commercial? That little jingle? Oh, I can't remember what it is.
It just came up on Instagram this week.
It did? For all to see in perfect harmony. Perfect
Oh,
harmony.
not that song.
I don't know why that song. That's what came up in my head, though.
Always a jingle in your head.
I know, right? I have a song in my heart. I always got a song.
I don't know if I don't know if that song was in your heart. Maybe in your head, but not. Hopefully not in your heart.
But that's the phrase, though.
Yeah, he just played like before today's podcast. He went on 1950s, 1970s.
I was doing the Frankie Lyman, Frankie Beverly,
just
it was
Frankie. Yeah, Frankfurters. I
Right.
don't know what. Yeah, it was just interesting. So, yeah.
So one last thing before we go.
Before we go,
I mentioned all the coaching stuff that I have going on, but we might have a surprise for y'all from the No Fruit Podcast. Hint, hint. We will thank y'all, and we talk to y'all a little later.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.